In part 1, we extensively covered the first 3 steps that you can take to tame a wide marketing funnel without the need of a large sales team. If you haven't watched it yet, we highly recommend you find the link and watch it first.
In this episode, we will be talking about steps 4, 5, and 6 and how you can go about achieving 2 very critical and enviable milestones with your customer: the ability to get them to self-educate and the ability to get them to self-filter. When you think that something as intangible as design and communications can't really affect your bottom line,
You usually end up with marketing and advertising tools that don't help you inherently mitigate your business risk.
that's what this podcast is about.
A behind-the-scenes look at how we go about doing what we do, mitigating business risk. I'm Jude Lazaro.
And I'm Mark Lazaro. And you are watching our weekly video podcast.
Step 4. Build the content tool for each fact or feature.
You now have a filtered and prioritized feature list. You've figured out your bins, you've figured out your USPs, and now you also have a pretty decent idea as to what content tool best serves each one of those little things. Here's where that list needs to get filtered a little more. You need to figure out which pieces of it you can build and which pieces of it you can't build. And that brings me back down to
Moolah.
the moolah. Yes, you have to figure out your budgets.
A great place to start is to take 2.5 to 5% of your sales revenue and use that for marketing. But depending on how large that number is, you can go between the 2.5 and the 5.
What, 2.5% as a marketing budget, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I have a question. What about someone who says, listen, I'm a startup, I don't have any sales revenue?
That's when you need to realize that you're headed in a direction. And you need to forecast and what is your first, sales plateau that you are envisioning and saying, I need to reach here at this point in time.
3 years, I'll be at this milestone.
Or even 1 year, I'm going to be doing this much of revenue.
If you're a company that finds yourself at a point where you have not spent that money when you started off, or you've spent a certain amount of your money and you've come halfway through your ideal sales cycle and you realize, listen, I haven't closed most of my inventory, you're probably going to have to cut your losses. Don't start with a budget that's going to hurt you in the first place.
Yeah. To take off on another tangent, there may be some of you who are running boutique companies that even at a 5% calculation of revenue will probably leave you with a measly budget that can't do much. What do you do then? Don't focus on the artifacts again. Don't go to a website developer and say, give me a website for as cheap as possible. Focus on your contents.
Can you clarify that with an example?
Yeah. So if you have a product that you're developing at home, if it's cakes, and you don't have that much of a budget, focus on the content. Get some good photographs done of your cakes. Now, does that mean you can hire a professional photographer? Maybe not. But if there's a photographer in your friend circle, ask for a favor.
Don't spend the money on a website developer. Go to Squarespace.
Yeah.
And for what? Mario, $10, $9? What's that amount?
$12.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's Mario.
We're not being sponsored by Squarespace.
You were not being sponsored by Squarespace. Yeah, that's Mario. He's producing the show.
How do you focus your finances and your attention on what matters? And always remember your content matters, because you can get the world's best website designer to come on board, and if your content's falling apart, you're just wasting money.
Your focus largely is on risk mitigation. You say, listen, if you've got 1,000 crores sitting there in your inventory, and you need to convert that into revenue, it's 1,000 crores. Yeah. Versus the lady who converted her kitchen into a bakery. She probably got a few thousands hanging in the balance. Yeah. And your marketing funnel and all of the content that you put into it and all of the tools that you build for it have to be scaled accordingly. Mm-hmm. It has to be connected to the risk that you're taking. Yeah. And I find a lot of larger companies making very silly mistakes exactly and precisely here.
How so?
Companies spend, say, 12 months or 18 months in a bad market.
Yeah, a bad economy.
Yeah, and what they do is they hold on to their profit margins. They don't deplete those profit margins, and a whole lot of other things that they think are not important take the hit.
One of them being a marketing budget.
Or you find rescue projects. We've come across a couple of clients who come to us saying, listen, I need you to rescue this inventory for me. So their marketing budget is $100. They burnt, say, 30% or 40% into that. And then they come to you with the unrealistic idea of the fact that you can do, arguably a fancy amount of things and rescue that with what's remaining in the kitty. And yes, sometimes you can. Because more than often you find that it's the quality of what you did
that matters.
Maybe pieces of advice for companies that have or find themselves in difficult situations. Find an alternate way to pay these people, like say a revenue share or an equity model. For instance, how we supported and how we continue to support Dasta with a revenue share model. The relationship's been clean. They didn't have the money initially to start with, and we've been able to support them because of that unique, compensation model, and it became realistic, which is why the results were also equally realistic. I think everyone within the company can attest to the fact that meetings with Dasta are so much more
productive.
They're objective because we're talking about real issues. We're not facing the quintessential designer problems.
Regardless of whether you're going to get into a revenue share with the person that you're going to finally get to build your content tools, or if you're paying them a fee, I hope you brought them on because they're professionals, not because they're cheap. Never make that the discerning factor. Don't go with the lowest bid. Go with the person who seemed the most professional to you. And one way of clarifying that is he will lap up the fact that you've given him this stuff that you've built in step 1, 2, and 3.
Oh yeah.
He will lap it up. If it's a professional, he'll say, wow, you've sorted out so much. You've put it on a platter for me to build for you. Focus on telling him what you want to communicate, which are your points. And he'll sort the rest out. Listen to him.
He's definitely going to look at you with a sparkle in his eye. I think that's great advice, which means I'd flip that and say, focus on the outcomes that you want. We're talking about, conversion cycles, for instance. When Ganesh called me back, 4 weeks into the deployment of the whole marketing toolkit, he says, listen, before you guys came along and did what we did, it was taking me anywhere between 3 to 6 months to close a client.
Yeah.
Right. So that cycle was that client sitting in his pipeline for 3 to 6 months. He says, now it's 5 days. I just closed a whole bunch of leads. 5 days from, down from 6 months or 3 months, that's a lot of time. Focus on those aspects, focus on those outcomes, because that's more meaningful.
At this point in time, when you've crossed step 4 and you've gone about professionally implementing your content tools, you have reached a very desirable milestone in your customer's journey through your marketing funnel. You have now reached the point of customer self-education. You've exposed everything there is to know about your product or service, and you've given your customer unequivocal access to it. You've got him to do a lot of the learning on his own time. If you've done this right, you've reduced the need for human intervention during the customer's learning phase by a huge factor.
Step 5.
Yeah.
Let your customer take critical decisions on his own time. Let's talk about what a critical decision is.
Critical decision is that point in time when you've convinced a customer that you're the right choice, but now he has to make further choices that qualify that particular purchase or particular buy-in or whatever it is that you do. So a critical decision in buying a car could be the variant of model that you're buying, the color that you're buying, maybe the fact that do you have a loan or not, can I instigate the loan process in buying this car.
It could also be complex price points.
Complex price points. If you have a more complex set of products than cars, something that's even infinitely more variable, then that's a decision point. And that's a critical decision that has to be made, or this extremely valuable customer can just drop off the face of the earth. Now, the idea is to, again, since we're trying to remove pressure from the sales guy, is to make this guy make these decisions and make it on his own turf, in the comfort of his own home, and probably with the right influences around him.
I think a good example of that would be Dasta, where we took something that is a critical decision, which specific apartment is he going to buy, and then how does he digest the complexity of the pricing model that they usually run. And when I mean complexity, there's a lot of line items on that cost sheet. So we built an online tool to do that, where we took availability and charted it out into a set of simple steps, where you could click on saying, okay, I want a 3-bedroom, that's your variant, and then you have another sub-variant, which is the floor, okay, which floor do I want it on, and you could make that choice. And with that, with those two qualifiers, you got a pretty complex price point, and you could dig in and look at that
in detail.
Yeah, so you could visualize what you were buying and where in the building it was and on which floor. You really can't pinpoint, at which specific point of the funnel this would be useful, because it totally depends on the type of customer.
Correct.
And each customer journey is going to be slightly different. So you might find someone who appreciates this at the apex of the funnel, and someone else who is sitting with a sales guy and making decisions with that salesperson. So the salesperson using the same tool. A long story short, these are critical decisions, right? For instance, we put in a small little piece of delight here, but more so of great value, because for the first time we put an EMI calculator in that was contextual to whatever you were doing.
Correct.
You usually find a customer needing to bring more people into to that decision.
Yes, influencers, family, whoever it is.
And most of the time what happens is all of the information that was made available to him is so parked away from his comfort zone. He just can't carry most of it back home with him. You end up finding that stretches out, that whole decision-taking process. So one of the reasons that step 5 is so important, and it says let your customer take critical decisions on his own time, I'd say we can qualify that even one step further by saying arm your customer to be able to demonstrate
Absolutely.
why he's taking that decision to the people that matter to him.
Absolutely. I mean, if you go down further and just highlight the way you can send this out and fill in your details and you get a PDF.
Yeah. So
that's exactly that, the ability to demonstrate.
we had a review meeting with Dasta's team, and one of the sales guys says, listen, I had a customer who walked in and he had chosen his apartment, he'd figured out his price point. As a matter of fact, he had gone all the way down to the bottom and sent himself a PDF of that particular apartment. So he literally walked in with a printout, says, this is what I want to buy. That means that client or that customer had taken himself all the way through the funnel to a point where he was ready to negotiate.
Yeah.
How do you quantify the value of that? You can.
Yeah.
Because pretty much what you're doing is freeing up the resource, the human resource that would have been stuck doing that with him. And not just him, but 15 or 20 or 100 people like him, of which you got one subset to qualify.
What I'd like to close before we move on from here is the fact that this entire pricing engine was such a big customer trigger in the entire process that we actually made an ad film about it.
So something that happens so far down the funnel, we were able to turn it around and say, listen, this is powerful enough to actually put at the opening of the funnel and convert it into an advertisement that brings leads in. We should play that ad. I think it's up here, right? Here we go.
We just decided on the exact apartment we are going to buy, 406. We made modifications to it, figured out what it costs, and we did all that right here, in 5 minutes. No sales guy, no sales talk, and Rajiv's not even in town. I can't believe no one's ever done this before. Well, that's how I buy a phone. Why not an apartment?
After you've let your customer make critical decisions on his own time, you have unlocked the envious milestone of customer self-filtration. If done right, again, you've further reduced the need for human intervention by a huge factor. So what's next?
So finally, we're at step 6. Let your sales team talk to a self-educated and self-filtered customer.
Ideally, I think the point I'd like to make here is that, even though this has been a very linear exposition of step 1, 2, 3, and all the way through to 6, honestly, this is actually a circular process. It's cyclic. Once you know what these 6 steps entail, it's about starting all over again once you've understood, what outcomes you want from it. You're coming at this because you understand the value of which parts of, that product cell needed to be consumed of your time.
Yeah.
Therefore saving you money, and which parts or which decisions from the qualification step within your funnel needed to be offloaded to the customer, where you needed to give him that benefit of the doubt to say do this on your own time. And you realize that, which means that now you're looking at your sales team in a completely different way, you're looking at your funnel in a completely different way, you're looking at spending money for the right reasons, you're looking at spending money in places where you know that putting that money down might look like a capex expenditure a little too early, but now that you've connected it to an outcome which is desirable, you know why you're making those changes.
One thing that has to be done at this stage is that you realign your sales team with this new ecosystem, and the fact that they fit into it and are a part of it, and shouldn't be working against it. So
The training is about basically potentially breaking older habits.
yeah,
Especially older salespeople that are really good at what they do are used to saying, no, it's my job to do all of these things. And you say, no, a customer could pop into the pipeline at any of these points.
yeah. The biggest benefit from a self-filtered and self-educated customer is he takes so much pressure off the sales guy, and he puts the sales guy on the front foot. He's there with a guy who's so convinced of his product that he's literally just putting the last bits of icing on the cake. It actually benefits the salesperson from a morale point of view, because he approaches the conversation with a sense of class, because he's not trying to be in your face and hard sell.
No, I couldn't agree more. Look at how that just love fits with the diffusion of innovation, for instance, the bell curve. You've got 13.5% of your innovators and early adopters. When you have to convince a customer, he's probably in your early majority or late majority, right? Your first 13.5% of your market is most likely going to be people that are going to convince themselves to buy it. Because if you go back to the theory that I'm talking about, the innovator is someone who buys a product well before it's ready to buy. Again, to come back to Dasta or Backpack, the people that bought into Dasta in those early stages were people that caused more referrals to happen.
Yeah.
And they most often convinced themselves and even got onto Facebook.
They became evangelists. Yeah. Another benefit of a self-educated and a self-filtered customer is the fact that they bring down that and reduce the amount of junk in that lead pool and bring it down to a manageable and potent set of leads.
Your KPIs need to be transforming. They need to be adapting to what you need in this day and age and what you can get. The Indian economy requires and is asking for brands that feel like global brands. And this sort of a point of view on your marketing funnel and then therefore the tools within your marketing funnel or the processes that you're going to follow and how your salespeople have to adapt to it is something that's so necessary right now. We can afford to export thousands and thousands of globally, qualified brands that just feel like something that you want to interact with, because most of your market today is exposed and they want it. They're asking for it. I mean, we're screaming for it, literally. Yeah. Aren't you and I?
Absolutely.
So to recap, step 4, get down to finding the right people to build your content tools. Beg, borrow, or build them yourself if your budget doesn't permit you. Take budgeting seriously by putting aside at least 2.5 to 5% of your sales revenue. Startups, forecast your projected sales revenue and work with that. This is where you unlock the self-educate milestone. Step 5. Let your customer take critical decisions on his own time. Put tools in place that allow him to demonstrate to other influencers without your sales team having to be around. Now you've unlocked the customer self-filtration milestone. Step 6. Let your sales team talk to your new self-educated and self-filtered customers. Repeat this 6-step process over time to continuously fine-tune your outcome.
I don't know if we've had enough time to articulate the byproducts that you get, at least the positive byproducts that come out of doing this. Because of the entire process of self-filtration, you've exposed so much of your company and said that, hey, all of this is something that conventionally was hidden behind a wall that I would safeguard. Now I've exposed it, and I've exposed what I do, and it's out there. And you, Mr. Customer, can make a decision. And that in itself is an act of transparency.
You've demonstrated that you're transparent. You're going to build trust. Brand value is an after product or a byproduct of great experience. You can't build experience without making someone comfortable or without making someone trust you in the first place. The other thing that may be peculiar to this episode is this aspect of the fact that when you find those small little pieces from that original list that you put together in step 1 and you filter it down and you suddenly realize, hang on, I wrote it down, but it's scary to go there. For instance, with Dasta, it was their pricing and taking this whole aspect, this whole idea of availability of apartments, which no one in the building industry was doing, and putting it out there. That's scary as hell. When you find those points, or when you come up to those, kind of aha moments, you could be standing at the brink of being able to disrupt the market.
So on that note, it's a good note to end.
Yep. So look up this playlist and Check the show notes. Almost everything you've spoken about will be, detailed out there in terms of links and offsite links. You should definitely buy David Allen's book,
which you've plugged quite a few times.
I know it's a great book. I read it. I love the book, and you should read it because it's really a big part of how step 1, 2, and 3 kind of fit together.
Also, leave comments and tell us what you think. If there's something you'd like us to address specifically, get into more detail about, we'd love to address it in future episodes.
That's about it for this episode, folks. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, yada yada yada. See you guys soon.
Why isn't there share on you? We should put share on. Like one of those things, Yeah? One of these things. Are you?
You're cut.
Like, comment, subscribe.
Good.